What up, YouTube Lakes? Coming back at you with another Starcraft 2 cast. On the bottom left-hand side of the map, we have our red Terran player Miro, and on the top right-hand side of the map, we have our blue Protoss player ZeCroiSSanT. Now, you might recognize ZeCroiSSanT. He sent me a game where he was playing a 2v2 against a Grandmaster level player with his teammate, so I'll post that video in the top right-hand corner of this video if you're so inclined to go and watch it. It was a very interesting game with a little bit of salt mixed in. Not too much, but just enough to add some flavor. So if you want to watch it, I do recommend that game. It was a very, very cool game to watch. Anyway, going back to this game, it does look like ZeCroiSSanT here is posting up a gateway at this ledge right here, likely to spot some Reaper harassment, which I do not blame him for. We do have the barracks being thrown down at the ramp of the main base of the Terran player, so no cheese or proxies coming from either player just yet. It does look like this is going to be at least a relatively standard game for the time being. There's not really much of a purpose in posting up a wall against an enemy Terran player, just because the Terran could post up down at the bottom of the ramp with siege tanks, with medevacs, and be able to snipe your building. So really not something that you have to worry too much about as a Protoss player. You should worry more about what is going to be Reaper harassment, which is what you see a lot more often. If you're walling off against Terran, you're more than likely to just lose your buildings, not really prevent any sort of cheese anyway. So, taking a look right here from the Terran player, it is going to be a Reaper flying in, taking a slight pause here to think about his life just for a second, and there he goes, and now he's running to the enemy base, the enemy Protoss player, to do some damage here. Let's see if he gets anything done. This is quite a big map. This might give ZeCroiSSanT here just enough time to reinforce this, but I think I spoke too soon. We don't have an army unit just yet. This Reaper will get some scouting information, will jump up to the main base of the Protoss. Let's see how many units potentially go down here. Throws a grenade immediately, dispersing some of these probes. ZeCroiSSanT here not reacting too quickly. It looks like he's setting up for a potential surround here. This Reaper almost looks like it was slightly mismicroed, but does manage to get away, doesn't get surrounded here. Does look like he gets stuck in the corner of this building location, not able to quite reach the ramp. It looks like this vent here was blocking him, and ultimately able to take out that Reaper. Taking a look at the units lost tab, he did lose three probes at the cost of one Reaper. I think that might have not been a great trade for the red Protoss player here, or sorry, the blue Protoss player here. Sorry, it was a favorable trade for the blue Protoss player, not a favorable trade for the red Terran player. Taking a look at the bases here, it does look like this is going to be both expansions established at this point. We're looking at what I think is going to be a macro game coming from both players right here. Miro happily saturating this base. We do have double Marines coming out of this barracks here. Taking a look at the production tab here, there is going to be a robotics bay finishing up for the blue Protoss player. We will see some potential observers here, and we do have the Widow Mine, so the observers will be able to spot this. This Widow Mine did get a kill, likely a scout from the blue Protoss player, so it does look like ZeCroiSSanT does know about the Widow Mines on the field. I would be very worried about Widow Mine drops. They are very frustrating to deal with, but the robotics facility will be able to spot this. If he does throw down more observers, we don't see any on the production tab here. We do have this probe. Looks like he's, I was going to say checking out for proxies. No, he is throwing down a third expansion of his own. This is going to be a hidden base from coming from our Protoss player. Miro might not spot this, and this might trick Miro into thinking that he has his opponent stuck on 2 bases, when in reality he has a 3rd saturated base mining. Right now we're just looking ahead into the future, but that might be what happens here. This base is not anywhere you would expect. You would expect this base to be in the 3rd locations of the Protoss player. We do have this Widow Mine right here spotting the 3rd base, making sure he knows exactly what the Protoss player is doing from an economical perspective here. We have both units here for either player checking out the Xel'Naga towers. So good sight on the left side of the map for our red Terran player. It looks like this Stalker decided to bail on that Xel'Naga tower here. It's interesting placement. I haven't actually played on these maps yet, but I think you could probably destroy these cooling towers here, and that would destroy the Xel'Naga tower and give you the opportunity to expand in the gold base position. So interesting map design for sure. Looks like ZeCroiSSanT is working on getting this base saturated here. I wonder if these probes are in range of the Xel'Naga tower. Taking a look, we do not see these probes, so they are being very sneaky here. Yeah, just barely out of range of that Xel'Naga tower. That is wild. Very lucky for ZeCroiSSanT here. We'll be able to keep that base hidden for a little while. We will have an attempted engagement here at this ramp, but unfortunately this tank will be able to shut it down. We do have a wall of what looks like 5 supply depots and a bunch of Marines, plus that tank. That will be very hard to break through until these Stalkers get blink. So unfortunately, not much that ZeCroiSSanT can do about destroying or doing any sort of pressure on this natural here. It does look like the Banshee spots the hidden base. Oh no. Gets 5 kills already, and it is doing some damage to this Nexus here. There's not much of a response from our blue Protoss player just yet. He's stockpiling some army units. Sorry about that. I was trying to highlight these, but I actually accidentally clicked the mini map here, and we do have what is going to be a push against this one Banshee here. I think it's going to be able to cloak and potentially do more damage to this Nexus here. Looks like it runs away. It actually psychs out ZeCroiSSanT here, and now it is doing more damage. ZeCroiSSanT waiting for that Banshee, but unfortunately it will not come. It is doing more damage to this Nexus. There's not much of a response right here, though. ZeCroiSSanT here is micromanaging the rest of his base, does not respond to this harassment on the Nexus. I think he could be able to take out that Banshee, but I guess he's just giving up on this base. He knows that was spotted, potentially realizes that it would be a very hard base to defend. We have an additional reinforcement here from our red Terran player, so it's possible he's just giving up on this base, doesn't want to bother defending it if it's already been found, wants to get a more optimal position, which I don't blame him, and it looks like that's exactly what he's going for. He's going for a more standard 3rd base location right next to his main base. This will be a lot easier to defend, so I do understand leaving this base to die. He could have tried to save it, honestly. This Banshee now stockpiling up 11 kills under its belt. It is still alive. There's still no reaction from ZeCroiSSanT here. This Nexus will go down if he doesn't decide to save it, and it does look like he is going to try and take care of this Banshee. Does decide to cancel this Nexus anyway. This Banshee going down. Hero Banshee with, I think, was 11 kills. Army supply is in favor of the Terran player right now. 59 army supply to 45. Nothing too crazy, but we do have 3 tanks here. If ZeCroiSSanT manages to get these tanks out of position, he would be able to handle this army, but as soon as these tanks siege up, it is a different story. They are very difficult to deal with unless he ran around them and tried to get them out of position of the rest of the army here. Bioball, unfortunately, doing quite a bit of damage. That Colossus getting blinded and pushing the rest of the Protoss army back. Very strong engagement from Miro here, forced the cancel on the third base. Now Protoss is back down to 2 bases to what is a 3-base Terran player. And we do have another command center here, which I expect will be lifted off and probably landed in the 4th base location. We do have another command center here as well. I wonder if he's planning on doing a double expansion here. That would be quite the flex. That might put the Terran at a disadvantage, though. If he decides to play too greedy, he might start falling behind in production, so we shall see about that. It does look like this command center is flying down to the 4th base location, and this command center is flying down to the other 4th base location. I'm not really sure which one to call, a 4th or 5th base. I'm gonna say that this is going to be the 4th base, just because it's going to land, I think, a little bit sooner than what is going to be what I'm gonna call the 5th base for the Terran player here. And he does have a big army. Looks like he's getting ready to attack the top left side of the map here. Does scan and see that there's another attempt at throwing down a 3rd base for the Protoss player here. Right now, he's just chilling out. He doesn't really look to be deciding on making an attack anytime super soon. And of course, as I speak now, he's moving out. And it looks like these command centers are going to be turning into planetary fortresses, which will make them very, very difficult to shut down for the Protoss player. Man, I feel like I'm already losing my voice, and this game is 11 minutes in, and we still don't really know who's going to be winning. This game is shaking up to be quite a macro game from both players here. At this point, we can't say either player is doing any sort of all-any play. We have a fourth Nexus on the way for our blue Protoss player. But right here, good reaction time from ZeCroiSSanT. Will have to be forced back, will not be able to engage with those tanks. It looks like there was going to be an attempt at a nuke here, but immediately getting shut down. I think he was in range of the detection of this cannon and got eaten alive by the Zealots, and we have a preemptive nuke right here. We'll see if ZeCroiSSanT walks into this by accident. I don't think this nuke is going to kill a thing, and it doesn't, but it does look very, very cool. That mushroom cloud, I feel like we don't see that enough these days. In Starcraft 2, of course, if there was a real nuclear war, that'd be a very, very different story, but we don't have to talk about that. We do have all these tanks surrounding this Xel'Naga tower here. They do not want to let go of this. Man. Army supply is still slightly in favor of the Terran, but nothing too crazy. With a couple good engagements, ZeCroiSSanT would be able to swing this back into his favor right now. In terms of worker supply, it is also very slightly in favor of the red Terran player, but nothing too crazy right now. This is still anybody's game. We might be able to catch this Terran army out of position. Will possibly be able to take out most of these tanks. This Colossus doing a lot of DPS on the back of this. ZeCroiSSanT coming out ahead here. Second Colossus coming to reinforce this Protoss army here. We do have a lot of ghosts, though. They might be able to throw down some good EMPs or even another nuke. And if ZeCroiSSanT doesn't move out of the way of a nuke in a big engagement, will lose potentially the majority of his army. Good job at catching that Widow Mine there. This nuke does look like it will not get a kill. We do have another nuke here, though. There's nukes everywhere, ladies and gentlemen. It does not look like ZeCroiSSanT is moving out of the way of this one. Possibly thinks he's safe because of this first nuke, but these units will definitely go down. One Colossus left from that engagement. What a wild nuke. Imagine seeing that in a cinematic, a nuke hitting 2 Colossi and one still stands after taking a direct hit from a nuke. Man, that'd be wild. It does look like Protoss is slightly ahead, but I think he lost his observer in the nuclear explosion. Forced to retreat because of the two cloaked ghosts. We have how many kills? 12 kills on this ghost and 3 kills on this ghost. So that is a wild engagement. Big hit from that nuke. Forced to re-up his army. ZeCroiSSanT is back home. Army supply still slightly in favor of Miro right here, and he has two more command centers on the way in the middle of the map. I suspect he's going to fly these out somewhere. These Zelnaga towers still standing. This Marauder here spots what is going to be, I think, the 5th Nexus for our Protoss player, but unfortunately left to die. It does not have any support from his Terran friends. What a gruesome death. That poor Marauder stood no chance against the Protoss army. Got a few shots and had his time to shine, but ultimately going down to the entirety of the Protoss army here. ZeCroiSSanT immediately sees that this is not something he wants to deal with, runs away. We might get some good engagements here by these disruptors, though. This Terran ball is, I was going to say, is balled up pretty nicely, but that was a great split from Miro. These disruptors running to the front of the army briefly. We have another disruptor hit here, taking out so many ghosts, and I think this puts ZeCroiSSanT ahead here slightly. It's still an army supply in favor of the Terran player, but in terms of that engagement, that looked like a great engagement from our blue Protoss player here. There's just so much going on. I don't even know where to look right now. Unfortunately, I think these disruptors were probably on cooldown. Is going to do a recall, manages to save the majority of his disruptors. This disruptor does go down. These zealots trying to do some damage here. They may be able to snipe this tank. This tank's so close to dead. Four hit points on it, but it looks like this is cleaned up. Unfortunately, those zealots were not able to take out that tank. That would have been at least some sort of win from those zealots, but unfortunately they do go down. They did take out a lot of the bio units, but that tank still stands. Worker supply, 81 workers in favor of the Terran player, 279 workers for the Protoss player. Not a crazy difference. This Hellion, 0 kills, but does get some scouting information, does see that this base is getting pretty well established here. Right now, though, it is 112 army supply to 64 army supply in favor of the red Terran player. So, unfortunately, this looks like it is going to be a very hard engagement for Protoss. If he hits this army directly, he's just a little bit behind in army supply, and by a little bit, almost double. We do have another preemptive nuke here, and we have a big warping of Zealots. We'll see if they get hit by these nukes. It looks like they're just going to try and engage this army here. On the mini-map, we do see the rest of the Protoss army trying to engage this Terran army right here. That nuke doing a good amount of damage. We have another preemptive nuke here. I like that playstyle from Miro, throwing out nukes where you would not expect them. These nukes are everywhere. I feel like we don't see them too often in games these days, but this is a crazy macro game. We have some huge storms here forcing the retreat from the Terran player. Oh my god. Army supply still in favor for Miro, 97 to 67, 30% or not 30%, sorry, 30 army supply lead by the Terran player, but with some really good engagements here, ZeCroiSSanT might be able to swing that in his favor, getting some good disruptor hits, getting some good storms. As we saw, that storm virtually wiped out the entire Terran army. That was so crazy to see. These Colossi getting recalled. Will he be able to save them both? Does not save them both. One of those Colossi does go down. It looks like infantry armor is going to be finished up here. Level 2 armor. So I think it's going to be 2-2 for... No, yeah, it is 2-2 for both players here. So even in upgrades right now, taking a look at the production tab, we have 3-3 on the way for both players right now. It is going to finish up slightly sooner for our Protoss player. Another move out here from the Protoss army. This is a non-stop game right now, but I think they will be caught out of position because this Terran army is going to try and snipe the fourth or fifth base. I can't even keep counting anymore. There's just bases everywhere at this point in the game. We're hitting the 20-minute mark. We have a nuke right here that might take out some of these units. I think that High Templar was as good as dead anyway. We do have these Liberators here shutting down this side of the ramp. This Protoss army doesn't really know what to do right now. I think I would walk around and try and attack them from the other side. Unfortunately, they have this big crevice to run around here. So the Terran army easily able to psych out the Protoss army. Protoss army out of position just a little bit, but Terran might be overextending himself just slightly here, getting caught in the choke point. I think these Stalkers will be able to snipe some of these Liberators. This Colossus doing a ton of DPS ultimately does go down, but ZeCroiSSanT was able to hold this, able to destroy the majority of the Terran army. But behind this, it does look like Miro is macroing up like a madman. We're still at 102 army supply to 66 army supply in favor of the Terran player right here. We have some good positioning of these tanks. We do have these orbital commands, which I expect are probably just throwing down mules, where they have to throw down mules and being used as scanning, as resources for scanning with that extra energy. We have another engagement on the middle left side of this map right here. This is still an army supply in favor of the Terran players. 113 army supply to 52 army supply for the Protoss. This is looking to be a little bit rough for ZeCroiSSanT right now. He's doing a great job at expanding. Unfortunately, does lose this base. We have a ton of SCVs right here on attack move. I'm not really sure what their purpose is. What a flex, throwing down the command center right next to the Protoss base. These SCVs, sacrificial lambs. That should tell ZeCroiSSanT here that Miro is going to be attempting to macro up an even bigger army at this point. It's 123 army supply to 60, double army supply in favor of the Terran player. He was able to force a cancel on this command center here. We do have, unfortunately, this Widow Mine, which will block any attempt at throwing down another Nexus right here until it gets taken care of. But we do have bases everywhere. This isn't something that ZeCroiSSanT has to worry about too much here. Man, I am running out of breath. This game is just so crazy right now that it's just non-stop action, really. This Liberator going to see if it can do some damage. I do like the staggered position of some of these Widow Mines. We have a Widow Mine right here on this ramp. We have a Widow Mine right here. It will force a cancel. This probe, unfortunately, will go down, and it does look like this Selnog Tower was destroyed. This Colossus may be able to force cancel on this command center, though. Big storm, but not quite a big enough engagement here. I think this is going to force a cancel. This is a lot of Stalkers and a lot of Charge Zealots. Unfortunately, the Stalkers not able to do enough damage right here. The Zealots getting destroyed. Good storm from that High Templar. Unfortunately, they are getting sniped by these ghosts here. Protoss running back home. This looks like, I almost wanted to say it looked like it was going to be a favorable engagement for the Terran player, but these Charge Zealots doing so much damage. They are just so good at closing the distance for that ranged bio ball. Widow Mine taking out a single Stalker. I thought it was going to take out more. Only 3 kills on this Widow Mine. We do have another nuke in position here. I think, unfortunately, this Widow Mine is going to go down. Actually, the nuke was canceled, so good timing there by Miro. Is going to try and reestablish this gold base right here, and at this point, the map is going to start being mined out. These bases are going to be very important for the staying power for either player. At this point, the players might want to start just trying to starve each other out until they can out-macro each other. Right now, it is a slight army advantage in favor of the Terrans still. We'll see if he's able to take out this planetary fortress. It looks like he's able to snipe it. There's not enough SCV support there to keep it repaired. And now we have what looks like a favorable engagement from ZeCroiSSanT here. Able to cancel, able to shut this gold base down, forcing the retreat of this command center and getting a very big engagement on that Terran army right here, even though Terran has been up in supply, army supply, most of this game. ZeCroiSSanT here has been doing a great job at maximizing the efficiency of his engagements. Typically, with a big army supply lead like that, if you're not being efficient with your army, you're not gonna make it past 1 or 2 engagements before you just get out macroed and overrun. So I gotta give it to ZeCroiSSanT here. He is doing a great job at making sure that his engagements are efficient. This unfortunately, this Widow Mine is still alive. It only got 1 kill, and we do have a ghost here. I wonder what he's going to be doing. He's throwing down a nuke. I don't know if I agree with the positioning of that nuke, just because there's not really much here except for what looks to be a cannon and a warp gate. There's not even anything mining. It does look like there was another denial of this gold base, actually able to take out a command center. I'm not sure. Yeah, okay, yeah, I'm not sure if this is going to be a favorable engagement for the Protoss player, unless he was able to get those disruptor hits, which would have been huge. I think that would have cut the army in half for the Terran player here. Looks like Protoss running back home, trying to establish what I think is going to be, what is that, like a 7th base? I don't think so. Maybe a 6th base, just because this base has not been reestablished right here. Do have this Widow Mine now with 6 kills. I think ZeCroiSSanT should consider mixing in some observers for his army. This is going to be a very, very hard position to take for the Protoss player right here. Almost able, though, to destroy this planetary fortress. May have been able to snipe that. Excuse me. But ultimately deciding against it. This is going to be very, very awkward. There's a base right next to the Terran side of the map, but ultimately at this point there's not really a lot of bases left to take. This Ghost here with 10 kills, so maybe those nukes doing some good damage. Some good attempts at throwing down some pressure from those disruptors, but ultimately very, very good army control by Miro here, able to keep the majority of his army alive and split and run away from those disruptor balls. So very, very good control by Miro here. And what is this going to be? Another nuke? He is just trolling at this point. I feel like these are not cost-effective nukes, I want to say. We do have an attempt at engaging in the middle of the map, which I do agree with. He will possibly be able to take out these 2 command centers here. This is a lot, though. Very, very big hits from those disruptors, and now suddenly we're looking at a favorable engagement by the Protoss, I think. Little bit of a mishit here from the disruptor, taking out a little bit of his own army, but unfortunately for Miro, that was still just a little bit too much to handle. These disruptors doing a crazy amount of damage. 2 command centers going down. I think this command center will go down as well. And this might be, like what I was talking about earlier, just trying to out expand your opponent here, have more staying power. And as the map gets mined out, suddenly the macro of the player that's behind in expansions will start to falter here. We do have this base, not quite as important to keep. We do have some mineral patches left, but not too many minerals remaining. It does look like this orbital command is going to go down. We do have an attempt to protect this from the back here. This is a lot of Protoss units to deal with, and suddenly the army supply is getting evened out. It is 48 army supply to 32, still slightly in favor of the Terran player, but not too much. This is going to be a very, very important base for the Terran player to keep, though. It's one of the few mining bases left, and there's not a lot of SCVs to keep this repaired. This planetary, I think, is likely going to go down. Unfortunately, does lose a couple disruptors here. Unfortunately for Miro, not able to save it in time. This puts him down to, I think, 1 mining base. We do have another command center being placed down just in the middle of the map, in the middle of nowhere, likely to try and hide it so he can land it somewhere else. Man, this game is just non-stop. I feel like I haven't taken a breath. We do have another attempt at throwing down this command center here, though. So this game isn't over just yet. Army supply is virtually even. Worker supply is in favor of the Protoss player by almost 30. So this game might be swinging into ZeCroiSSanT's favor here, so long as he's able to keep himself ahead in expansions against his opponent here. If this gold base does come up, though, this is going to be huge for Miro. That is going to increase his income incredibly. We only have this 1 mining base from, I think, the Terran player, and we have 2 mining bases, it looks like, on the minimap for the Protoss player. So right now, he is going to be up in economy. He may be able to start to match the macro of his Terran opponent here. With some good engagements, though, either player could swing this game their way. So we will see shortly. Unfortunately, these High Templar are caught slightly out of position. They're just a little bit slower than the rest of the army here, but with good disruptor hits and with these units clumped up, may be able to take out a big chunk of this army here. And it does look like this gold base is going to be denied. So that is a huge win. That is a huge engagement for ZeCroiSSanT here, though, keeping the Terran player down to 1 mining base, while he is still at 2 mining bases. But he did lose a good chunk of his army here, though, and suddenly now it's 85 army supply to 42 army supply in favor of the red Terran player. That Dark Templar getting yeeted to oblivion, got blasted, died so fast he just vaporized. We do have an attempt to establish a mining base here on the left side of the map as well. I would have liked to see this Widow Mine destroyed, so the ZeCroiSSanT could have a 3rd mining base here. This base looks like it is going to be outmined shortly. We have the Liberator here is going to throw down some really frustrating annoyance on this mineral line here. Will start to take out a lot of probes. If ZeCroiSSanT doesn't react to this, his army is totally out of position, and this is one of his only mining bases left. Does react to it, is able to run away. It looks like this is going to be this ghost is going to be taken out. 20 kills ultimately on that ghost, hero ghost. So I guess hanging out here and throwing down nukes wasn't a terrible idea at all, and it does look like we have this gold base reestablished for, I think, the 3rd time for our Terran player. Man, I know I'm not going to have a voice after this game. This has been a crazy cast so far, just high intensity game. There has been not a lull in the action for hardly a second here. Unfortunately, this base is going to go down. It looks like no, ZeCroiSSanT might be able to save this. This is a very, very important base for ZeCroiSSanT to keep, though. If he's not able to keep this base mining, he's down to 1 mining base that's almost mined out. And it does look like ZeCroiSSanT throwing out the GG. Well played. Miro returning the GG. What a wild game. And I think this is what decided it right here. This base not mining, and it looks like ZeCroiSSanT almost mined out here. Worker supply, 41 workers to 53 workers. So still a favorable worker supply for the Protoss player, but unfortunately losing his entire army in that last engagement there. As we can see, 5 army supply to 73 army supply. So that last engagement deciding the game. I think he wouldn't have been able to outlast Miro at that point. He wouldn't have been able to re-macro. Had only 300 minerals in the bank, 300 gas in the bank at that point. ZeCroiSSanT knew that was over for him, but what a wild game. Very evenly matched players. Very fun game to watch. We had some nukes thrown in as well, so very cool game. One of the longest casts I think I've done so far. So, if you enjoy what you saw, please consider shooting me a like and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. And if you want me to cast any of your own games, I will have my email down in the description below. And I'll see you guys on the next one.